Hey guys, PokkeCorp back here, and since we are gonna be getting the brand new endgame content coming very soon, I figured this is gonna be a pretty good start to go over some CN tier lists as well as all of the CBT changes that has happened, which is gonna be impacting the performances of our unit from live server compared to previous seasons, right? So I think some of you guys, I think at this point it's been almost 1 month playing to Arknights Endfield, so it would be pretty good if you guys are still unaware as to why some users are gonna be placing as it is. So without further ado, let's just get into today's content. Alright, so for the very first thing is that your team building is always going to be way more important than individual units in Arknights Endfield. So for example, if you want to play a certain team, their respective units value will go up tremendously, and as of such, basing CBT changes and tier list value on your respective teams is going to be way better than instead of basing on individual units. So for example, if you want to play physical team, then PokkeCorp is going to just inherently have way more value than even Leviathan if you have no intention of playing the Heat team. On the other hand, if you want to play, let's just say Cryo Team, then there's going to be a little bit more of a comparison between Yvonne as well as Last Right. So it really just depends on who do you want to raise up in Arknights Endfield. We're not too sure if there's going to be 2-team endgame content. There was no such thing for CBT 3 because that was going to be the Umbral Monument, but that might change with the brand new thing coming out, which nobody's ever seen before so far. So jump into the actual tier list from what I've gotten in CN, and this is going to be the general list as of right now. Tier 0s being Levitating, Yvonne, as well as Ardelia. Tier 1 being Last Right, Li Feng, and Enmin. All the other kind of stuff you can just kind of refer for yourself. I wouldn't say this is factual or not factual because at the end of the day, they are always going to be having their inherent biases as well as different perspectives. So this is just more so of a video for your own reference. We are going to be using them for your own guide. So for example, this tier list, I believe it will release roughly within the first week of the game launching, but ever since then I think a lot of us has actually picked up Last Right and see like the potential damage it can do, especially against a boss target. So I wouldn't be too surprised if I see Last Right even going up the tier list competing with Yvonne. So with that being established, let's just jump straight into our very first team, and that is going to be the Heat team. So the Heat team is going to be our definitive tier 0 with Levitain, good against both single as well as AoE target, with Wolf P5 resetting his combo timer, making him very good for hit infliction. In fact, Wolfguard is one of the only reasons why Levitain is going to be feeling so smooth, and without him, I would say that the team will definitely suffer quite a bit with regards to the generation for Levitain stacks. If you want to be going up against AoE target, you can use Akiguri, single target using Untao, and then our data so far is going to be the best in slot 4 now, with the corrosion, sustain, as well as the debuff perfect for the slot 4. But that being said, Gilberta having been released recently, I can definitely see her being used as well in place of Ardelia. It is just that she inflicts nature infliction, so you need to consume one more stage to get to corrosion before you get into Levitain. But overall, the utility as well as damage amplification might be a little bit higher based on Gilberta's kit, right? So to each their own, to each their own. So what are the changes that have been made from the CBT as compared to the live server for the Heat team? So for Untao and Akiguri, you can see their multipliers got nerfed tremendously, with his skill, ultimate, as well as P5 all getting a nerf, where his skill went from 14% to 10%, ultimate debuff from 28% to 20%, and his P5 buff from 6% to 4%. Generally speaking, his final damage increase for any DPS went from roughly 54 to only 38%. And then for Akiguri, they basically nerfed the ultimate, where she recovers 100 skill points down to only 80 skill points nowadays, while the cost went up from 100 to 120. For Ardelia, it's not going to be a very big nerf, basically reducing the susceptibility from 25 to 20%, as well as the P1 multiplier going from 10% to 8%. And then lastly, Levitain, a slight ultimate multiplier nerf, where you're overall minus 10% across the ultimate with 4 basic chain. So generally speaking, I would say that for the Heat team, there isn't too big of a change except for specifically Untao, because the damage differential was actually pretty considerable. So nowadays, I'm pretty sure you guys have also played by yourself. Akiguri just feels that much more comfortable, especially when I'm playing in most content, even when it comes to single target if you don't really want to keep changing units, because of her skill point battery and the ability to just run her across multiple different teams. I can definitely see Akiguri having a lot of value over here as compared to Untao. But I do think that when it comes to absolute raw damage output, when it comes to single target, if you do manage rotations where you only use Untao skills once, then it wouldn't be that big of a damage drop off anyways. And then now moving on into the Cryo team, where it's gonna be Yvonne or Last Right as your main DPS. A very similar team building, with Zalki being a mask, Ardelia or Snowshine for the sustain, and then Perdica or Gilberta for the buffs. for Flora, you can also consider using her combo into ultimate stacking capabilities. And for Zalki, you do need to keep your DPS at max HP in order to get the arts amplification. So preferably you actually do not get hit with Zalki, which is also why Snowshine is going to be useful for the wheelchair, so you can get a little bit more of the shielding. Rest in peace back in those days where people were running Yvonne and Last Right, but that is unfortunately not going to be the case anymore for Cryo Team. Generally speaking, as you guys would have gotten from Gilberta by now, I do believe that running a double Ardea into Gilberta is going to be very viable. Or if you're going to be using Perdica with Gilberta, you can still free up your Ardelia for your slot 1 if you're going to be running Heat Team, assuming that we are going to be getting 2-team endgame content. For the CBT changes for the Cryo Team is actually quite a bit. The most important change is going to be Yvonne, which is the reason why I think some of you guys, you don't really understand why people are saying that Yvonne got a change and is she nerfed, is she buffed, like how is she from the CBT. So here is basically all of the changes from CN compiled into this current list. TLDR, it is a overall buff despite having massive changes. So the issue with Yvonne back in CBT 3 was that she gains 70% crit rate, but it's only for a skill, which means that your basic as well as combo, it will lead to having low crit or your skill having too much crit. There really isn't like a very good balance since she gains 70% crit rate but only for the skill. On the live server, they changed their crit buff into energy regeneration. So this ties up with Yvonne's kit extremely well, because now she can actually get into the ultimate state a lot quicker instead of focusing on, okay, should I get enough crit for the skill or for my basic into a combo skill. And then on top of that, they also changed the skill multiplier to be one of the highest in the entire game, because it forces a cryo infliction into solidification. You're going to be getting a 1100 skill multiplier buff, which is absolutely absurd. So now, because of these changes, her skill can also help a lot with your AoE content while using your ultimate for single target damage, making her pretty flexible for most of the situations that we are going to be facing nowadays. One of the issues that probably players are facing is Yvonne doesn't really have access to the signature weapon, at least until it comes out in the banner. So that might be a reason why players are finding underwhelming performances with Yvonne. And then on top of all of these things, we also have the additional crit damage buff across the board, where it led to the final damage increase for Yvonne going up by roughly 20%. Now, the other changes mainly is just going to be Last Right and Zalki. So for Last Right, they nerfed her skill as well as the ultimate. The skill went down a little bit by 20%, and the ultimate went down a little bit by 200% at the maximum. But the ultimate cooldown did go down from 20 to 10 seconds, but as of now, it is a little bit hard to hit the 10-second ultimate, assuming that you can have enough energy regeneration. And then for Zalki, her buff and coverage actually got nerfed. So your talent 50% got nerfed to 10%, and the most important is your buff coverage. It went down from 15 seconds to only 5 seconds. So it's actually a really minor buff if you're talking about the amplification, but your final damage increase, generally speaking, went down from 74 to 66% for a Cryo Team. Now, moving on into the next and perhaps one of, if not the most popular teams on the entire game right now, a physical team. For this particular setup, we are mainly going to be talking about the distribution between Dapen and Admin as the main DPS. Although, as of right now, I'm sure you guys have noticed before, and even for myself personally, I have been using Ember for my main DPS. That's going to be on field as well. Not really main DPS, but just using her for the stagger as well as skill point generation by using her on field. But that being aside, the proper team, or rather the usual team you run physical in, is gonna be either Dapen or Admin, get a Churn, get a Pokke, and then get a Li Feng, and that's gonna be the highest possible damage. And I believe even till this day, this is still gonna be the highest possible damage, because while Ember gives you a lot of skill points, she doesn't really give you that much damage aside from the actual comfort. So with that being established, physical would be, in my opinion, the most flexible team comp, and definitely the most beginner friendly, because we all have access to Admin as well as Chen straight for free. So if you either have Pokke or Li Feng to start, then you pretty much can just let it go and build yourself a physical team. Dapen does have higher damage compared to Admin if you have higher potentials, but Admin might also get more potentials if you unlock more stories, so it is very comparable depending on who you prefer. Generally, from what I've seen so far in the live server, a lot more people are using Admin just because she's given for free for everyone, and it's just easier to race instead of worrying about whether or not this is going to be worth it when compared to Dapen. For Pokke, generally in the entire physical team, he will have the highest priority with his skill point as well as debuffs, and generating a lot of skill points from his combo skills, from the ultimate, and etc. For Li Feng, on the other hand, he's going to be having a higher damage output as well as a link buff to buff his own ultimate for absolutely insane damage. But between both things, skill point generally tends to be the more important factor, because it will affect your entire rotation instead of just raw damage by itself. Lastly, Ember team, I'll probably make a separate video if there's going to be enough interest, where we basically have been running her as a main DPS for a while. I'm still bringing her, so probably when my own account has my entire physical with Ember core raised up, I will be cooking on that in the future. So for your CBT changes in the physical team, for Pokke, they basically buffed his ultimate cooldown from 20 to 10 seconds. Li Feng's his skill duration went from 10 seconds to 12 seconds. For the Min, her combo cooldown went down from 16 seconds to 15 seconds. For Chen, unfortunately, she did get a little bit of a nerf where they removed the 10 stagger from the combo. And then Dapen, there was quite a decent amount of change, but overall it is going to be a buff for their talent. So now every one vulnerability consumed is going to be up to 24%, once they've been 6%. So it is actually really, really good with its combo skill, which basically just consumes all the vulnerability, which generally speaking, like I mentioned just now, between Dapen and Chen, whichever one you have more potentials of, so if you're going to be wielding and getting Dapen, he will be dealing more damage. It's just we don't really know what's Min's potentials in the future. Now, moving on to pretty much our last team, and that's gonna be the Electric team. As of right now, we only have AV as our main DPS. We would definitely need more units to support, so maybe version 1x1, if Zhang Fangyi is gonna be an Electric DPS, then we can see how the potential is gonna be going. As of right now, the team is gonna be super straightforward because we don't really have a lot of options. Not too much of a replacement because you pretty much always are going to be running Pertica, Arknight, as well as AV. The last slot between Entao and Gilberta, they can both work, but I would say Gilberta's skill does have the grouping, which makes it super easy for AV to target her lance positioning. Generally, because of the quality of life, and she also has a decent amount of arts amplification, I would say that she's going to be an upgrade to Entao. So for the Electric changes, it's actually going to be pretty much nothing. That's pretty much done. And with that, we have come to the end of every single CBT changes, overall tier list of what Arknights Endfield is going to be looking like. Looking forward to the endgame content. We can see how the different players are going to be, as well as the version 1.0 update after Yvonne, which is going to be roughly 3 weeks from now. Then we'll see even more changes, right? So hopefully you guys have been enjoying the game. I've been taking it a little bit more chill because I have quite a lot of things at the side. Let me know what you guys think. All the best for the gacha pools, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.